What's up, hackers? Good afternoon. My name is Paul Burbage at Hexlax on the Twittersphere. My first, which one is this? SkyDogCon. Thanks for having me. It's already becoming one of my favorite conferences. Thanks for coming out, even after lunch. Everyone's kind of tired, so it's all good. A little bit about myself. I'm a malware researcher at FishMe, and one of my passions dealing with malware is studying those malware families that utilize some sort of PHP control panel, and then researching the vulnerabilities within those. One of my hobbies is playing the drums and listening to music. Of course, I really like drum and bass, trance, my old 90s grunge, of course. It's all good. Feel free to hit me up on the Twitters or the email there. Go over our agenda for this presentation. Talk about what the frack is in an exploit kit. We'll dive into the under the hood of Hunter exploit kit itself. There's a recent campaign that you may have heard of that was in the news recently, brought to light by Proofpoint, so I'll go over that. The drop malware from that campaign, and then starting to get into the vulnerabilities themselves of the administrative panel. Also have some proof of concept code that I can share with y'all. Mainly just wrote it for the demo, but I put it up on my GitHub, and y'all be able to play with that as well. And finally, as the end user, utilizing Windows, what they can do to mitigate some of these issues with exploit kits. First, a little disclaimer though. Since the proof of concept is considered zero-day, as far as I know, it hasn't been patched in the wild. So definitely don't want to play with that at home unless you want to be visited by people with suits. So show of hands here, who knows what an exploit kit is? Quite a few people, okay. Well, for those that don't, let's go ahead and ask Lenny. An exploit kit, also known as exploit pack, is a toolkit that automates the exploitation of client-side vulnerabilities, usually targeting browsers and programs that a website can invoke through the browser, such as Adobe Flash, Adobe Reader, or Java runtime environment. Thank you, Mr. Zeltzer. Taking you through the typical exploitation of a victim utilizing a web browser. Initially, they might receive a link within a massive malware spam campaign that redirects them to an exploit kit. But sometimes there might be no user interaction at all, just solely through typical web browsing. There might be some type of malvertising on the website that they're visiting, or a compromised website that then redirects them silently to that exploit kit, infects their PC and drops the malware onto the victim's computer. So the sole purpose in life of an exploit kit is mainly to install malware without any user intervention. So as you can imagine, some of those malware actors, they're utilizing massive malware spam campaigns that require some sort of social engineering attack initially to get that malware installed. But with an exploit kit, as long as there's a vulnerable browser session that's able to drop that malware, there's not too many social engineering attacks that would need to fulfill that space in order to get that malware installed. So pictured here up the left, the guys from Friday pretty scared about drive-bys. Down at the bottom there's a screenshot of the actual generation of or where the administrative user of Hunter exploit kit would upload their malware to the panel in order to facilitate that exploitation. Diving a little bit under the hood of Hunter exploit kit itself. So the panel itself or the exploit kit itself is actually rebranded Eros exploit kit. So I'm not really sure about the ties between the author of these kits. It could be that it's the same exploit kit author that just rebranded it, or it could be that the Eros leaked and then it was just rebranded by a different individual. So not really sure. So if someone has a copy of that or knows how to get a copy, I'd really like to see that code myself. Hunter exploit kit was actually first seen in August of 2015, and it can be rented $300 a week or $800 a month, which is very inexpensive compared to some of the more well-known exploit kits that are out there, such as Neutrino or Angler. Those can go into the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just to rent those. So one thing about this particular exploit kit, there's very light plugin checks to see if there's even the particular plugin available in the client session. And the way I like to think of this is, a spray and pray shotgun. Other people call it a carpet bomb method for exploitation, where they'll, regardless of the session, send pretty much every exploit known to a browser session that's available within the kit itself. So the panel claims about 20 exploits, but in reality, only about 9 are usable, mostly targeting Adobe Flash. Screenshot here within the administrative panel itself of the exploits that it claims to be capable of targeting. Notice the 2 red stars up at the top. It might be kind of hard to see the CV numbers there on the screen, but these were actually released or found from within the hacking team data dump earlier this year. Here's a forum advertisement, underground forum, I believe it was exploit.in, that was advertising this particular exploit kit for its use. And although the Twitter account down there at the bottom has been suspended by Twitter, doing a little OSINT on that particular Jabber or XMPP account, came across 2 other Twitter accounts that are still active. And this was in August of this year. The first Twitter account here, and as you can see, the dates are still pretty fresh, so still active. Although the Proofpoint article, they mainly found about this exploit kit from a massive malware spam campaign that I'll share with you here in a bit. But since that campaign is kind of wrapped up, they have not seen any active threats from Hunter exploit kit, although it's still being advertised. So the idea is that this is still being utilized in the wild. Here's another screenshot here of the second account that I found, utilizing that same XMPP address and very recent advertisements. Blowing up that first advertisement, you can see the date stamp down there at the bottom just a couple days ago. And seems like every couple days he pushes out this advertisement for the EK. Thought it was pretty funny. He included the hashtag of cyber war. When I first saw that, I imagine NORAD utilizing this exploit kit to launch nukes. So I mentioned earlier that Proofpoint was pretty much the one that publicly disclosed this particular exploit kit, and reached out to them. Their research team's been awesome about giving me more data than what they could publicly share, and they had a very large phish campaign for this particular EK back in August. It utilized to send the malware or the spam campaign that contained links. It utilized PHP mailers on compromised hosts to send those emails. These purported to be some type of fake billing or traffic ticket, and also even coupon themes. Mainly targeting the Brazilian ecosystem down there. Main reason being the language within the email was Portuguese, and the type of malware that was dropped, called the Banking Trojan, was solely targeting Brazilian financial institutions. So I'm not sure if too many people are familiar with this family, but essentially it's an auto IT script that initially drops from exploitation of the EK itself. And then from there, this auto IT script downloads the main payload of Banking Trojan. So this particular family of malware is designed to capture usernames and passwords, credentials solely for Brazilian financial institutions. So I mentioned earlier when reaching out to Proofpoint when I first started to put some data together for this presentation, a good buddy of mine over there by the name of Brian Burns sent some redacted headers and whatnot of that initial spam campaign. What I found within the headers had a XPHP script tag with imo30.php. So luckily was actually able to find this PHP source code on Pastebin, and from there dropped it onto a lab computer and rendered it here in browser, and this is what it looks like. So very simple, and again, I believe that's also in Portuguese. So fairly, fairly safe to say this was contained solely within the country of Brazil, targeting Brazilian users. Screenshot of one of the initial malware spams, or the redirect to the actual exploit kit. So the underlying text down there was the .zip. As you can see on the bottom of the screen there was a link to the exploit kit itself. This one purporting to be some sort of judicial or court notice to the individual as a lure. Second one here, claiming to be some sort of ticket, boleto, I believe in Portuguese. Down at the bottom, it's a little bit cut off, but this was a fake image source tag that tried to trick the user into thinking that it was a PDF file that they needed to click on, but in reality, again, it just redirected to the exploit kit. And finally, the third one, targeting Brazilian chocolate lovers, I guess. This is a coupon for some delectable chocolates. So starting to dive down into the actual vulnerabilities of this exploit kit, one of the huge problems within most PHP panels for malware is the lack of user input validation. So the kit source code itself actually leaked on September of 2015 from a researcher compromising the actual exploit kit itself. He made a copy of that, then leaked it on or in underground forums. So I was able to grab a copy of that and threw it up in a lab. Whenever I initially look at PHP code for vulnerability analysis, I utilize an open source program called RIPS, which is available down there at the GitHub link. And RIPS comes back and it'll give you a pretty good idea of whether or not there's some vulnerable paths. But of course, with any type of vulnerability assessment, you have to start weeding out those false positives. So started to mainly just concentrated on the PHP upload vulnerabilities for this presentation, but also some of the initial results also included command execution as well as SQL injection as well. So diving into, today I'm just disclosing one of the first PHP upload vulnerabilities for the panel itself. Within the file ekit-newtask.php, there's a series of upload checks that it goes through. The main purpose of this particular file within the panel itself, I showed the screenshot earlier. This is where the user of the exploit kit would upload his malware into the panel, and then that's referenced on disk. So studying this particular block of code, I wanted to figure out if there's a way for me to upload a PHP backdoor to kind of masquerade as executable. By uploading my own backdoor, I then pretty much have full access to that panel. One of the first checks that this block of code performed is it would die if it was not an AJAX request. So this being a client header, it's very easily to forge, not only from the curl command line, but also within libcurl, given any programming language, Perl, PHP, or Python even. Second one being a blacklist of extensions. And whenever I'm taking a look at PHP code for vulnerabilities, I love seeing blacklists because they're very easily bypassed. One of the more well-known malware families, Zeus, some of its earlier panels that were released out into the wild also utilized a blacklist, which if you're able to grab the crypto code of the particular malware sample, you can upload a PHP backdoor because it utilized a blacklist for extensions. Just thought I'd share that. So one of the main issues with doing a blacklist is, regardless of how you might be able to think of all the ways that you might have PHP execution with the particular ones, one of the biggest problems is not taking into account what Apache considers as PHP executed extensions. So this code block, it didn't take into an account that you can have an uppercase extension for PHP and still get a command execution, or code execution rather. Finally, a little bit of obfuscation that was implemented step 3, it uploads to the hard-coded directory, which is that long MD5 string, which happens to be the MD5 of uploads. So trying to fool or maybe any type of like directory fuzzing that a particular pen tester might perform against a C2. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And finally, it renames a file to a bunch of random digits dot the extension. Diving into the code block itself for the AJAX check. Won't go too much into this, but again, just a simple curl parameter to bypass this check. Here's the actual code block for the blacklist itself. So whenever I initially get that PHP source code, I'll toss it into RIPS, and while it's churning and burning that, I'll do a series of greps, maybe for password or blacklist, definitely being one of them. So I love seeing that pop up in my my grep output. And as you can see here, it's very simple. Within the curl parameter itself, although we're uploading shell.php, it's actually a file that resides on disk. That's my backdoor shell. There is a file name parameter that you can utilize for that extension. Finally, putting that all together, here's the full curl proof of concept for shell upload for Hunter exploit kit. So taking a look too down at the bottom, hopefully folks in the back can see that. In my lab environment, I installed it at the path of hunterik.local/ek, and then you can see that MD5 string starts with 512 of the directory that it drops it in, and then the code block renamed that the file to a bunch of random digits .php. And if anyone's interested, put together just a quick PHP code block or a code script for this, mainly for the demo. So one issue, though, that I came across is that whenever it's dropped into that MD5 directory, there unfortunately is no directory browsing because they do have an index file automatically. So you're not going to know the name of the shell that it renames that random digit to. So what you can do within the PHP script itself, I just set up a for loop that pretty much tries the combination. He coded this, the randomized function, utilizing the PHP rand function. And although he specified the max integer value as 9 trillion, the PHP code itself does not support a max integer of 9 trillion. So that's machine dependent. So bear that in mind too. So I think my code will, try to go all the way up to 9 trillion, but it's definitely not multi-threaded by any means. So if you're, hopefully you're not doing this in the wild, but if you do, bear that in mind. It's going to take a while to find it. And it's demo time. Woo. Any questions so far? Yeah, man. Yeah, so the question is how do they go about that renting of the exploit kit itself? And as far as I understood it, the actual author of this exploit kit, he would give you full access to the admin interface of the panel, and then from there, you could upload whatever malware that you wanted to. So within the actual leak of the exploit kit, there was over 20 samples of malware. Most of them, all of the auto IT droppers for banking Trojan within that uploads directory. All right, let's see here. Hopefully the demo gods will be kind to me. Let's see. All right. So it just takes two parameters: the full path of the URL to the exploit kit, and then the PHP shell backdoor that you want to upload. It looks like it's all right. Let's see, 6276. There we go. Cool. And this is just a pretty typical WSO backdoor PHP shell that I uploaded. I did want to show you a couple things within the panel itself. So taking a look at the code, during my vulnerability analysis, okay, so, well, as the pen tester, if I'm, just broke into this web app by uploading a file, well, how can I, fully take over that panel? How do I get admin access of the panel itself? I could, zip up the entire directory and dump the database and install that locally, or I could, browse out to the configuration file, see where the SQL creds are, and take a look at the SQL. Most of these, and most of the exploit kits and PHP panels that I analyzed, the admin username and passwords are stored within the database. But with this one, it was actually stored in login.php. So I wanted to show you that here. It'll load. Yeah. So this one was, although he MD5, he's checking the MD5 of the particular values here. MD5 is pretty insecure. Main reason being is that most of the hashes have been cracked. I really like the website hashkiller.co.uk. So toss those MD5 hashes in there, and they came out to be admin for the username and hunter for the password. So pretty simple to get into that kit. And then backing up here, so in the event that we did want to attach to the SQL database that's running back in on this panel, the SQL creds themselves they're also in plain text within the panel, as most of them are even with WordPress or Joomla. Here we go. And those are the plain text creds for the SQL database itself. So by exploiting, utilizing this arbitrary upload exploit, finding out the credentials for the SQL, we pretty much own this entire panel now. Even within this shell, it has a SQL client here, if you can see that, that I could attach to that SQL database, even if it was limiting local host access to that database. Any questions? Good to go? Cool. Good to go. That was pretty much that I have for the demo. All right, let's talk a little bit about, again, end user Windows users mitigation. Patch, restart, then try to apply Windows updates again, right? Yay. One pretty cool tool that I came across was Secunia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Secunia PSI. What this application does, it'll check all of the apps that you have on your computer, such as Adobe and Java, make sure that it's up to date. So that's a pretty neat one. I think there's probably at least a couple more different applications that'll check for those third-party plugins to make sure they're fully patched. You also want to limit the JavaScript execution within your browser too. So within Chrome, you can install ScriptSafe, and also within Firefox, there's a plugin called NoScript. Also, you might want to consider disabling Flash if it's not needed within your environment. I know there's several, within your work environment, you might have some, particular HR software that you might have to run Flash on. But generally, I try to only utilize a VM for that type of scenario. And you can also, disable Flash itself in Chrome about plugins or Firefox tools add-ons plugins. By default now in Firefox? Oh, that's cool. Good for them. Yeah, I just wanted to give special thanks to, as well. Brian Burns over at Proofpoint, again, reached out to him after they published the article, as was very interested in the exploit kit itself, and he's been very helpful in getting a bunch of data that they weren't able to share publicly, although redacted, I have to say, but sharing nonetheless. And big shout out to Pentest Fail, as he's shaking his head, but I appreciate his help in getting me here and everything. It's a great conference so far. And finally, the research team at FishMe, thanks for giving me the time off to be here. That pretty much sums it up. Have any questions or concerns? Yeah.
So I guess aside from the hunter exploit kit, or a lot of the exploit kits you come across, do they have this kind of same spray and pray mentality when they're used? People just blast a whole bunch of exploits out.
Not most of them. Some are more targeted. Well, they'll try to do some sort of client pre-filtering to figure out, well, there's no reason for me as an exploit kit to send you a vulnerability or an exploit if you're not running Flash or if you're not running Java, right? And the main reason for that is, within the corporate environment, you have IDS or you have a host-based IDS within most antivirus signatures. So, yeah, you wouldn't want to, do the shotgun effect because that would give away the presence of an exploit kit. But yeah, that's a good question. So since this exploit kit is definitely low end compared to some of the more widely used and highly developed ones, that's the approach that this particular one uses. Thank you for your question. Anybody else? All right. Guess we're all set. Thanks for having me.